Hello and welcome to Esther's Gardening Adventures. I'm Esther, and today is a 2-for-1 in that last night was the second night of 2 nights of a deep frost. It got down to 27 or 28 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm in Maryland, zone 7A, and I covered my seedlings, the stuff that was in the ground, my cool weather veggies, as well as my winter sowing containers. And so we're going to go out this morning and uncover the plants and the containers and see how they've done. The first night of the frost, they did really great. Nothing was really damaged or hurt, but I've heard that the second night, if you don't have a really hot day, can be a little bit more challenging because the first night you have all that residual heat left over from the daytime. And the second night, if you had a cold day, the following day, there's just not as much heat in the ground, and so plants are more likely to suffer kind of the more consecutive nights of frost you have. So I'm a little bit nervous, I'd say I'm like 10% nervous because I did this last year and it worked fine. But you know, every year is its own thing. So that's one part. We're going to go out and uncover and make sure everything looks fine. The second part is I'm going to give an update on my winter sowing jugs, the seedlings in my containers. And if this is your first time hearing about winter sowing, basically it's a process for using things like milk jugs, soda bottles, juice bottles, things like that as mini greenhouses to grow your seedlings in outdoors in the winter and early spring instead of indoors under grow lights. And there's all kinds of advantages to it. And if you want to learn more about that process, please check out my Winter Sowing 101 series. But either way, you may be interested to hear how our seedlings have done. Let's see how they look. Besides being a little pushed down, I think they look great. I don't see any real damage, frost damage. These are the early breakfast radishes. Look how nice they look. Our purple Brussels sprout is looking real nice. Of course, that one I wasn't worried about, but it was in the way of the others, so I covered it. The rest of the radishes look really great. We have a little bit of ice. Look at that, a little bit of ice on this leaf. Oh, it's already melted. And guys, look how much the beets have grown. They're a slower crop than the radishes, so obviously they take a little longer. These radishes are looking fine. And, you know, I probably didn't need to cover the pansies, but the pansies are looking good too. All right, now let's go see how the backyard fared. Here are my jugs. My winter sowing jugs covered in a twin sheet flannel, and they're looking real good. Then over in the far distance you can see I had, although it looks like it's been blown off, a frost cloth on some of the lettuces I'd transplanted, and then over there I had a frost cloth on pea shoots that had just come out, and my spinach and mustard, Mizuna mustard. All right, and I had taken off the trellis so that I could put down the blanket, and I laid down the trellis on top of the frost cloth because it's pretty light. It's not very heavy, and it helped hold the frost cloth down to protect the seedlings. So let's see how they look. Although now the trellis is all caught up, so we will just do it this way. These are our mustards that we planted 2 weeks ago-ish. You can see we've got one and another little one coming up. We got 2. I planted 2 seeds, both of them sprouted. Over there is, you can see the little baby spinaches, and they look like they're doing fine after the frost. And the peas look great. Now I know they can handle a slight frost, but I just don't know how deep of a frost they can handle. So all the cool weather veggies that I covered with a frost cloth did great. I may not have needed to cover them. I honestly don't know, but I'm the kind of person who doesn't like to take a risk. Now, the one thing I did not cover last night was my raspberry plants, because they've been in the ground for more than a year and they did just fine. So did the strawberries down below. And looks like the blueberry plants that I have yet to transplant, but my materials for transplanting had just showed up, so I'll probably do that very soon. Now let's check on our lettuces. Now, I didn't cover them very well, but looks like they're doing fine. They were already a little bit funky looking before this. Some of the leaves didn't do well with the transplant, but overall they look pretty good. I mean, look at that. That looks pretty healthy to me. All right, now let's check on our jugs. Great news, guys. The seedlings are all doing fine. So they survived the second night of frost, which, such a relief. So now we can get to looking at what's in the jugs and what has sprouted. And as I said, we have some tomatoes and peppers that have sprouted this weekend, or the last couple days. And let's go look at them. Guys, I take it back. Looks like we did have one plant. I haven't checked them all yet, but we did have one plant damaged by the frost second night. I just opened it up to give it a closer look. My nasturtiums. Now, they aren't, like, this one's crispy. This one's done. But it looks like they may still pull through. Some of them may still pull through. So fingers crossed. The good news is nasturtiums grow fast. So if I have to start new ones, I will. It does look like, I mean, the fact that they aren't doubled over, I think is a good sign. So fingers crossed that they will bounce back. You may be wondering why I have some things in solo cups. Well, in about 2 hours, I'm going to a socially distanced seed and seedling exchange. And these are my red Russian kale and my dinosaur or lacinato kale. Look how beautiful they look. I mean, just really beautiful. I have them covered in tulle to protect them from cabbage worms and cabbage butterflies laying eggs on them. And I'm going to keep quite a few of those and transplant them once I set up the tulle arrangement on the beds. But since I had to open the jug anyway to create the transplants to give away half of them, I went ahead and potted all of them up. And I've marked the ones that I'm going to keep for myself. The Paris Island lettuce, I plan to transplant tomorrow morning. Look how beautiful it's doing. It's doing really, really well. It is definitely ready to be transplanted. Probably a little late end. I still haven't decided to do with that, honestly. I think I'm just going to cut it and have some microgreens. Because I did transplant one of the containers and it was just so tightly sewn. I'm just not a fan of the hunk of seedling thing, it turns out. But that's all right. My alyssum, you can see there is a chunk missing from that. And that's because I did create some seedling cups to give away at the seedling exchange. They don't look that great in the cups, but I'll still take them. If somebody wants them, if not, I'll bring them home. Now, let's look at the tomatoes and peppers that have sprouted. Yay! Oh, and if you watched my other video I posted yesterday on my single seed challenge, you'll know that my eggplant has also sprouted. All right, here is some of the new ones that sprouted this week. Peppers and tomatoes. The first one I'm going to show you is jalapeno. Look, we got a seedling growing. Now this one I didn't do a divided jug in, so that's just regular. The next one is Jimmy Nardello pepper seeds, or peppers. And look at that beautiful one there. This is a jug. These are seeds that I harvested from last year's plants. So I'm super excited to see that they're growing. Next up, we have a divided jug, zebra tomatoes and Cherokee tomatoes. Let's see. Put it in the sun so we can see it better. And it looks like we have some of both growing, which is really exciting. I can tell I should have put a stick down or something. I'm pretty sure the ones in the bottom are 1/2, and then those are, let's see, the bottom half is the zebra. Yeah, the bottom half is the zebra, and the top half is the Cherokee. So I'm going to have to be super careful about when I transplant these up, labeling them correctly and making sure I get them right. I may have to rethink the divided jug thing. Next up is yellow pear tomatoes and Gardener's Delight tomatoes. Let's see how they're doing. I think we have some of both, guys. Yes. Cardinal is chirping at me to get away from its food. Well, I will be away from the bird feeder soon. Look at that, guys. Look how great those look. So exciting to have warm weather vegetables. All right, and the last two I'm going to show you are part of that soil challenge. And the reason I don't think this part of it matters too much, although honestly I'm not seeing much of a difference. These are poblano peppers. I planted one with Happy Frog soil, that's the one on the right, and one with Nature's Care, which is an organic Miracle-Gro brand. And at this stage, honestly, seeds will sprout, and all you have to have is a medium to have them sprout in. So the nutrients the soil provides is not a huge deal until they start developing the first set of true leaves, the second set of true leaves. So we have, right now, a sprout. Let's see if we can see. We have a sprout in both of them. And I think we have at least one coming up for another. I think I only did 3 seeds per jug, 3 or 4 seeds per jug. But hey, they sprouted, and that's the important part because I want poblano peppers this year. Yes, yes. All right, let's get to a montage of all the other containers. So it does look like we had 2 plants that were damaged from the second night of frost. The first night they weren't. And I think I have 2 takeaways from that. One, and this is something I saw last year too, that's true again this year, which is that if a seedling is touching the sides of the container and it's freezing, those leaves are going to be damaged. And both of it's not a guarantee though, I should add, because for example, my sunflowers, which I've read are slightly frost hardy, my sunflowers, their leaves were touching the sides of the container and they were not damaged. But my nasturtiums and my Christmas lima beans were definitely damaged. For the Christmas lima beans, I'm actually going to pull them and redo those jugs because I'm worried it's going to stunt their growth, and I'd rather have healthy lima beans, and I'm not going to be transplanting the lima beans till mid-May, so because they're one of the ones that need a really good warm weather. And I need to look at my journal, but I think I planted them too early for my area. And see, this is the problem. while you can winter sow any time of the year, the way that the weather fluctuates, the way that climate change, if you believe in it, but either way, the weather is fluctuating more and more, and we're having a lot of warm weather followed by frosts. Now, of a late spring frost isn't unusual, but I'm less comfortable winter sowing things that I'm going to use in my summer garden until mid-March to mid-April. And in the case of my Christmas lima beans, let me look and see in my journal when I sowed them, because I'm curious. I bet you anything I sowed them in early March. Sure enough, I didn't even wait till March. I sowed Christmas lima beans on February 20. February 20, guys, not even March. So my lesson learned for next year is I'm going to wait to sow the nasturtiums, because they both of these grow very fast in the jug. That's the other reason, because their leaves will touch the side. I'm going to wait to sow those next year until mid-March, or maybe even early April, to make sure that if we have a frost like this, that if their leaves are touching the side, they won't be the size where the leaves are touching the side. You're always learning with gardening, and you're always finding out new things. And I am beyond thrilled that the process of covering the containers worked for 95% of my jugs. I mean, that's a rough percentage, but for the vast majority. The tomatoes that had just sprouted did fine. And really that's because the inside temperatures of the jugs are pretty warm compared to outside. But if they're touching the sides of those jugs, they're touching basically the air and that cold weather, and they can get frozen if like the condensation on the jugs gets too cold, which is what I think would happen with these two containers. So not the end of the world. The nasturtiums I'm probably going to leave in the container and see how they do, but I'm probably also going to plant up another set of them tonight. And then if the ones that I plant that were kind of damaged don't look like they're recovering easily, I'll just toss them and I'll put them in my compost pile. So I think there's some lessons learned here. I still am going to continue to do the process of covering my containers on freezing nights with just a blanket. And in the case of the nasturtiums and the Christmas lima beans, I did not overplant those. I think I only did for the Christmas lima beans, I did 5 seeds and 3 of them had sprouted. So it wasn't an overcrowding of the container either. It was just the nature of they're a vining bean. They're going to be shooting up fast because they're normally directly planted. The other option is last year I both grew Christmas lima beans in containers, and I also directly sowed them. And while the direct sows were probably 2 weeks behind at the very end of the gardening season, and some of them did get killed off by frost at the end of the season, it wasn't that huge of a difference. So if I do have to directly sow them, that's also okay. And it's also why I didn't winter sow my zucchini and squash until last night, until April 2nd. And I'm actually going to direct sow my cucumbers because they're a small plant, they're a fast grower, and last year they just didn't really like being transplanted. It was probably my error for when I started them, but I'm going to be direct sowing them. Anyway, all that is to say, pretty successful management of handling the 2 freezing nights of temperatures. Fingers crossed that we don't get a deep freeze again. A slight frost a lot of these plants can handle, or a blanket covering them will take care of, but a deep freeze, which 20 degrees by definition is deep freeze, is harder on plants that are meant for summertime. They're not meant to be exposed to those temperatures, so it's just difficult. If you like this video, though, or you found it useful or interesting, please hit that like button. If you aren't already a subscriber and you're interested in being one, please do so. And make sure you hit that bell button so you get alerted when I post new content. And otherwise, I'll see you next time.